you ever stopped to think about what really hides in the layers of ice in Antarctica? In recent years, discoveries that should be in all history books continue to be ignored. And today, we will explore why governments, scientific institutions, and even space exploration agencies seem to be keeping secrets about what they found on that frozen continent. Prepare yourself, because the answers you are about to hear may completely change the way you understand humanity's past. Antarctica is not just a remote place. It is the coldest, most isolated, most hostile continent on our planet. A place where human life is practically impossible. There are no cities, there are no roads, there are no permanent residents. The only people who appear there are scientists, researchers, explorers brave enough to face temperatures that can freeze a human being in minutes. But here is the question that nobody wants to ask out loud. If it is impossible to live there, why are 7 countries, Norway, the United Kingdom, Argentina, Chile, France, Australia, and New Zealand fighting for control of this territory for more than 100 years? Why do governments spend millions and millions on research in a place where, theoretically, there is nothing of value? The answer is much more interesting than you imagine. In 2012, something happened that changed everything. A satellite captured an image of a perfectly oval structure on the eastern continent, 120 meters in length, completely symmetrical, so perfect that it is impossible to be natural. Scientists tried to explain it as an ice formation caused by katabatic winds. Those powerful winds that rush down from the tops of glaciers and cold plateaus, creating long ridges of snow. It is a reasonable explanation in theory. But here is the problem. The satellite images did not match the usual pattern. The symmetry was too much. The precision was too much. It was as if someone had used a ruler and compass to draw that structure in the ice. Experts began to raise alternative hypotheses. Meteorite impact? Geological anomaly that modern science has not yet studied? Then someone remembered other anomalies on the continent. Mysterious mountains. Elevations that rise above the ice with an almost perfect pyramid shape. And they are not just 1 or 2. There are 4 main pyramids identified in Antarctica. 4 structures that look frighteningly similar to the pyramids of Egypt. Now, here is the part that nobody is really talking about, the part that triggers suspicion even among the most skeptical scientists. The analysis of the rocks showed that all 4 of these pyramids are made of the same type of stone, exactly the same, and if they had been built by someone or something that knew exactly what it was doing, as if there was a plan, a unique technology, an intelligence guiding that construction. Coincidence? Perhaps. But when you start to put the pieces together, when you find not just one, but multiple pieces of evidence that something unusual happened on that continent, too many coincidences stop being coincidences. They become a pattern, and patterns have an origin. They have meaning. But the pyramids are just the tip of the iceberg, literally and figuratively. Let us talk about the penguins. Recent discoveries on King George Island revealed 6 penguin bodies in perfect state of conservation. Not recent ones. Naturally mummified under layers of ice that, according to estimates by scientists, are several hundred years old. Perhaps even thousands. The discovery was made by specialists from the University of Florida, the University of New South Wales, and the Australian Antarctic Division. For 6 weeks, they removed manually, day after day, layers of compacted snow and ice until the bodies appeared. What the scientists discovered left them in silent panic. The penguins belonged to a rare species that lived during the last ice age. But that is not all. Analysis of their stomach contents showed that they fed on mussels, small fish, and seaweed. Seaweed that exists in warmer waters. What does this mean? It means that the coast of Antarctica used to be warmer, much warmer, fertile, habitable. It was not the frozen desert we know today. It was a place where life not only survived, but thrived. It was a paradise. Here is the question that nobody is answering adequately. What happened next? Why did the continent transform into a desert of ice? And more importantly, were there other forms of life there? Were there civilizations? While experts analyzed these ancient samples, the attention of the entire scientific community turned to an extraordinary document, the map of Piri Reis. This is a scroll that still provokes intense debates among historians, cartographers and researchers. The map was created by Turkish Admiral Piri Reis in 1513. Look carefully, 1513. A few years before Magellan's expedition. It shows the outlines of South America, Africa, part of Asia, and, here is the disturbing part, the outlines of Antarctica. But the real shock is not just the fact that Antarctica is there. The real shock is this. Piri Reis portrayed Antarctica without ice, exactly as it could have been tens of thousands of years ago, when the continent was still green, habitable, before massive glaciations buried it under kilometers of ice. How could a Turkish admiral in 1513 have had access to that information? What sources did he consult? Who instructed him? The official answer from historians is that it was coincidence, luck, an educated guess. But many researchers claim that the map of Piri Reis really reflected the geography of Earth with surprising accuracy for its time, probably based on older maps that came from even older sources. And if that is the case, how do you explain the presence of a continent there that was only officially discovered by Western science 3 centuries later, in 1819? Perhaps the map's creator was based on lost knowledge, along with civilizations that history prefers not to remember. Perhaps the real history of the world is much more complex, much older, and much more disturbing than we are allowed to know. Now let us move to the 20th century. We are talking about the so-called Base 211, an installation that, according to rumors circulating among researchers and declassified files, was built by German researchers in the late 1939. There is strong evidence that the secret base of the Third Reich was located there, a place where important archives and experimental technologies were delivered, a refuge, a bunker. Officially, only one thing is known. In January of 1939, a German Antarctic expedition really did reach the continent. They sailed there. They settled. They declared part of the territory as New Swabia. After that, everything gets blurry, clouded, intentionally obscured. Dozens of theories have emerged about what exactly happened in those parts. Some sources, including espionage documents from the time, claim that subglacial tunnels and shelters were being built under the ice. Others say that the last refuge of the Reich's leadership was located there. Impenetrable bunkers, underground cities. Over time, the story surrounded itself with countless legends. It was said that the Germans discovered a system of subglacial caverns where they could have set up an entire city, with forges, with laboratories, with advanced research centers. Technology that Western science had not yet developed. Technology that even today would seem like science fiction. When the post-war period began, when the Reich fell, the Americans and Soviets immediately became interested in it. They sent investigators. But when they got there, what did they find? Nobody knows for sure. The archives were classified. Today, a German research station is located in the territory of Old New Swabia, a modern station. A station that continues to carry out research that is not fully disclosed to the public. But Antarctica is not a place for random coincidences. It is not a place for minor secrets. This is where one of the most mysterious lakes on the planet is hidden. We are talking about Lake Vostok. This lake is situated under almost 4 kilometers of ice. Let that sink into your mind. 4 kilometers. deeper than the combined height of 3 Niagara Falls stacked on top of each other, deeper than the depth that most submarines can reach. Later research revealed that the lake is approximately 250 kilometers in length and about 50 kilometers in width. It is an interior ocean, a hidden world. Some theories suggest that the lake formed long before glaciation, at least 15 million years ago. If that is true, and there is solid scientific evidence suggesting it is, it means that an ancient ecosystem could have been preserved under the Antarctic ice layer, isolated from the outside world for millions of years. Evolution in slow motion. Organisms developing far from any influence of the surface world. It is this exact possibility that leaves scientists deeply concerned. What will happen if we accidentally disturb the fragile balance of that underwater world? What will we find if we actually manage to reach that lake? What forms of life have never seen daylight? What will be the impact of introducing human technology into an ecosystem that did not evolve to deal with external interference? In the early 20th century, British explorer Frank Bickerton made a discovery that was later called sensational. In Queen Maud Land, he found the first meteorite in Antarctica's history. But this was not an ordinary meteorite. This was special. Subsequent analyses revealed organic compounds in the rock, compounds that could indicate that life once existed beyond Earth as well. That life is not unique to our planet, that perhaps, just perhaps, our first ancestors came from another world, brought in a rock that traveled through space. That discovery triggered an entire chain of new investigations, new hypotheses, new questions about the origins of life on Earth. In January of 2019, experts from the United States National Ice Center made a discovery that again left the scientific community disturbed. In the satellites, they identified an iceberg with an absolutely anomalous shape. Its forms were almost perfectly straight, geometrically perfect. The unusual shape of the iceberg immediately sparked intense debate. Because you know one fundamental thing about nature, it rarely creates straight lines. Nature is organic, chaotic, random. Perfectly straight lines are the signature of intelligence, of deliberate design, of planning. Some experts suggested an explanation: subglacial water flows. They move with extraordinary force and can literally cut through ice like a hot knife cutting butter. It is an explanation that makes sense, until you really think about it. Water does not cut with geometric precision. Water erodes, wears away, creates irregular patterns. Water does not create perfect rectangles. Water does not create lines at right angles. Meanwhile, the situation in Antarctica is becoming increasingly concerning for scientists, more and more alarming. Over the past 40 years, ice coverage has been shrinking faster than even the most pessimistic climate models predicted. Not long ago, it was thought that the ice was stable, permanent, a constant that we could count on forever. But the latest satellite data showed the opposite. The ice is melting at an accelerated rate, alarming, almost as if something were setting a timer. Why is this happening? Well, official science offers several explanations. Changes in ocean currents, warmed waters, the ozone hole over the continent, global climate change. All of this is true. But there is another factor that scientists are beginning to whisper about in private conference rooms. There could be hidden heat sources under Antarctica, a kind of underground furnace, an active geothermal system that heats the lower layers of ice from below. That natural heating makes glaciers unstable, weakened, vulnerable to collapse, and it could be one of the main reasons for the accelerated melting we are witnessing. When ice melts, more and more fresh water flows into the sea. This does not seem like a big problem until you consider the implications. This fresh water dilutes the salinity of the oceans, disrupts ocean currents, causes massive melting of other ice shelves, and all of this has a direct, catastrophic impact on global sea levels. Coastal cities around the world could be flooded. Millions of people displaced, economies collapsed, infrastructure destroyed, all because the ice in Antarctica is disappearing faster than was ever thought possible. But there is something even deeper under Antarctica, literally underneath everything. In an area known as Wilkes Land, there is something that has left scientists deeply concerned for several decades. Satellite images revealed a massive depression, 480 kilometers in diameter, a scar on the Earth's crust. Many experts are convinced this is the mark left by a massive asteroid impact. If the calculations are correct, and there is solid evidence that they are, the meteorite that caused this impact could have been up to 50 kilometers in diameter. 50 kilometers? Can you visualize that? A space rock the size of a mountain, colliding with Earth at speeds that the mind can barely comprehend. A collision of that size could have changed the climate of the entire planet, could have triggered mass extinctions, could have altered Earth's orbit. But there is a problem. The supposed crater is hidden under more than 3 kilometers of ice. Impossible to fully verify, impossible to investigate with current technology. Impossible to confirm or refute the theories. It is like looking for a needle in a haystack when the haystack is made of frozen ice that covers an entire continent. In recent years, increasingly frequent discoveries have been made that leave you wondering, could an ancient civilization really have existed under the thick ice of Antarctica? The first mentions of this go back to the 18th century, when explorers who ventured into the northern part of the continent reported mysterious findings. Strange objects, fragments of structures buried under kilometers of snow and ice, designs that did not seem natural, proportions that suggested intentionality. Then it became clear they could be talking about traces of something made by man, or made by something more intelligent than man. Scientists do not rule out that these artifacts belong to a culture that disappeared long before modern humans appeared. If the existence of these structures under the ice is ever confirmed, truly confirmed, not just whispered about in private circles, it would call into question the accepted history of humanity. It would change our fundamental understanding of who lived on Earth millions of years ago. It would dismantle narratives that we have been taught since childhood. The McMurdo Dry Valleys are one of the strangest places in Antarctica. They are located within the Transantarctic Range, which extends for almost 4,800 kilometers. Unlike the rest of the continent, there is practically no snow or ice here. Why? Because the winds are extremely strong and because the soil has a high concentration of salts that prevent snow accumulation. That is why the area looks more like a desert than part of a frozen continent. Sand, rocks, arid, desolate. Scientists have had interest in this place for a long time, but it was the excavations, when paleontologists discovered fossilized plant remains, that really caused a stir in the scientific community. The findings are estimated to be between 50 to 100 million years old. We are talking about fragments of ancient trees that once grew in low, warm valleys that existed here long before modern glaciers formed. Trees, vegetation, forest in Antarctica. Experts are certain these plants were not native to the area. Analysis showed that they could have arrived in Antarctica about 70 million years ago, brought by wind or ocean currents. Seeds traveling through space and time, landing on a continent that was habitable. This discovery provided scientists with a rare opportunity to investigate the remote past of the continent. But simultaneously, new and disturbing questions arose. If the climate of Antarctica really did allow the existence of such wildlife, of forests and vegetation, then what was the nature of the civilization that could have existed here? What was their technology, their knowledge? No less mysterious is Mount Erebus, a volcano located on Ross Island. It is one of 4 volcanoes in the region and the only one that remains active today. It was discovered in 1841 by British explorer James Clark Ross. Since then, Erebus has made its presence known more than once. More than 100 eruptions have been recorded. The most recent eruption was observed in 2020. Scientists continue to monitor this volcano closely because it is among the most active on the planet. An active volcano means heat. It means geothermal power. It means that perhaps, just perhaps, there is a source of natural energy that someone or something could have learned to exploit. Antarctica looks like a world without life. Nothing but ice, cold and wind. Absolute desolation. But even here, where it seems that nothing could survive, where conditions are so hostile that they seem expressly designed to eliminate any form of existence, science found a remarkable exception. Fungi, Antarctic fungi that can survive at temperatures below -32 degrees Celsius. Some species really thrive in the cold. They grow faster at low temperatures than when it is warmer. Reverse evolution, extreme adaptation. Researchers were especially surprised by one particular fungus discovered at a research station. This fungus can break down traces of oil that leak from fuel tanks. This species is already being studied intensely by microbiologists. They hope that in the future it can be used to clean up oil spills in other parts of the world. A problem solved by an organism that only exists in one of the most extreme places on Earth. How did life here learn to do this? How did it evolve this ability? What other surprising abilities do these Antarctic organisms possess? But this is not the only mysterious phenomenon recorded on the frozen continent. There is a phenomenon here that even experienced observers call frightening. It is called singing ice. When the temperature drops drastically, ice crystals begin to vibrate. The dense structure creates sound waves that can travel hundreds of meters of range. These sounds were first recorded in 2010. Some years later, the phenomenon was studied and described in detail by scientists. It was discovered that the voices of ice can be heard from up to 3 kilometers away. 3 kilometers. Imagine being in an Antarctic camp and hearing sounds coming from a distance where your eyes can barely see. Scientists use this phenomenon to study the structure of the ice layer and air movements in Antarctica. The sounds make it possible to detect even the smallest changes within the ice, changes in layers, movements of groundwater, structural anomalies. But why does nature need this music? Why does the ice sing? What is the purpose? Science still does not have a satisfactory answer. The Gamburtsev Range is one of the most mysterious parts of all Antarctica. It is completely hidden under kilometers of ice, so it is impossible to see it directly. Scientists study these mountains only through satellite images and radar data. The range is located right in the center of eastern Antarctica, where massive sheets of ice converge. It is exactly here that many anomalies have been recorded. Patches of heat, ice moving in unexpected directions, signs that seem to point to enormous voids under the surface, cavities, empty spaces. Some experts do not rule out the possibility that there could be a cavity of a very regular shape under the mountains. So regular, in fact, that it might not be natural. So geometrically perfect that it suggests intentional construction. Design engineering. One of the most controversial theories is linked to this area. The idea of an ancient city that could have existed long before any known civilization. We are talking about Atlantica, the city that Plato described in his writings. A brilliant civilization with ports, palaces, canals built in gold and bronze. A city of wonders, of advanced technology. According to ancient legends, the city disappeared in an instant after a catastrophe, submerged, swallowed, erased from the map in the blink of an eye. For many years, people sought traces of Atlantica in the ocean off the coast of Africa, in the Mediterranean, in various other locations. Without success, they always failed. Nothing. But what if everyone was looking in the wrong place? What if the city was not in the ocean, but buried under the ice? Satellite images really do show strange formations in Antarctica, lines, arcs, tunnels, structures that appear artificial, proportions that suggest intentionality. If not even a fraction, not even a fragment of these findings confirms, through deeper investigation, the history of humanity will be completely rewritten. Everything we learned about our past would be questioned. Who were these ancient civilizations that supposedly existed in Antarctica? Why did they disappear so completely? Why did they leave no visible traces? And more disturbingly, why are their footprints hidden on a continent where, apparently, nothing should be able to survive? Why, of all regions of Earth, would they choose the most hostile, the most inhospitable, the most impossible? Unless they had no choice. Unless they were forced there. Unless something pushed them into the depths of the ice. Antarctica remains a closed book, hermetically sealed, but every expedition that occurs, every discovery that is made, every secret that leaks through the corners of the scientific community tells us one crystalline thing. There is a much larger story waiting to be told, a narrative that has been suppressed, a truth that was buried along with the ice, a story that someone, some institution, some government, some authority does not want us to know, does not want us to discover, does not want us to question. And perhaps soon, when the ice begins to melt more rapidly, when the layers are removed by climate erosion, when the secret can no longer be kept, that story will finally come to light. The truth will emerge, and the world will never be the same again. The questions we ask today may have answers that completely transform our understanding of life, of history, of humanity, and of the universe. Antarctica is the guardian of ancient secrets, and soon it may be ready to share them with the world.